Sieu Phong, a bonsai ahead of its time. In the history of Vietnamese ornamental trees, most works are created to continue what already exists. Only a very few are born to open a new path. Sieu Phong did not appear as a declaration. It was not loud. It did not openly challenge traditional values. Yet it is precisely this quiet presence that gives the work its weight, a gentle lean, just enough to set an entire creative mindset in motion. When Sieu Phong was created, Vietnamese bonsai still stood firmly on the foundation of classical standards. The moral order of Tam Cuong, Ngu Thuong, the ideals of Ngu Phuc, fortune, prosperity, longevity, health, and peace. The balance of the five elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. Beauty was measured by completeness, by symmetry, by staying within the prescribed form. Deviation was often seen as a mistake, and creativity, if allowed at all, was confined within very narrow boundaries. In that context, Sieu Phong emerged not as an answer, but as an open question. When beauty steps outside the mold, Sieu Phong does not follow the upright, dignified form of the traditional gentleman tree. It leans, bowing slightly before the wind, yet never appearing weak. The trunk suggests movement, like a moment captured midair, held still by an invisible gust. Branches do not stack in rigid classical layers. They interweave, supporting one another through a carefully composed visual rhythm. One branch reaches outward with intention, not to show off, but to create a focal point, a place where the eye must pause. The canopy is treated with freedom and restraint, breaking away from the familiar four pads and one apex structure. In its place, there is space, lightness, room to breathe. In Sieu Phong, we do not see a closed, perfected beauty. Instead, we witness a beauty in motion, an imperfection carefully guided by artistic thought. The journey of a work ahead of its time. Sieu Phong was created by Master Hoa Xuan nearly half a century ago, before the 1980s. At that time, the concept of bonsai as a sculptural art form was still unfamiliar to most tree enthusiasts. The tree lived quietly in a garden until 1994, when it was acquired by Hung Ga, a bonsai collector from Hanoi. A turning point came when Sieu Phong appeared at the exhibition held at the Temple of Literature. In a space long associated with classical standards, this leaning form immediately drew attention. Not merely because of its shape, but because of the thinking hidden behind that shape. Later, the work was passed on to Su Trung Sun as a spiritual gift for his daughter. Eventually, Sieu Phong found its home with Ngoc Sơn in Phu Li, Hanam. The name Sieu Phong was given by Master Cuong Hoa Si, one of the most respected figures in Vietnamese bonsai. A quiet affirmation that this was no longer just a beautiful tree, but a work carrying the spirit of standing beyond the wind. Local fig. Quiet nobility. The tree is a san que, a local fig, humble and familiar to the Vietnamese bonsai tradition. Yet under the hands of Master Hoa Xuan, this ordinary material was transformed into a quiet form of elegance. The trunk bears numerous natural knobs. Its fine branches are rugged and sinewy. Every scar is a trace left by time. One large cut across the leaning trunk, made to redirect the main line upward, remains visible to this day. A hollow scar that speaks of courage, decision, and consequence. From root to apex, every element serves the whole composition. Nothing is meant to display technique, yet to the trained eye, the mastery is unmistakable. Master Hoa Xuan, a pioneer, ahead of his time. At that moment in history, choosing innovation was never an easy path. Following tradition was safe. Breaking away meant risk, doubt, criticism, and even rejection. There must have been nights when Master Hoa Xuan stood silently before the tree, weighing right against wrong, tradition against what he felt must be done. Still, he chose to move forward, not to be different, but to remain honest with his own sense of beauty. That honesty opened a new current in Vietnamese bonsai, a transition from traditional craft to art shaped by creative thought. Sieu Phong, a philosophy of life. Sieu Phong leans before the storm, yet its crown continues to rise, always oriented toward its roots, toward its origin. It is an image of the Vietnamese spirit. One may bend before hardship, yet never lose inner integrity. To live amid turbulence while preserving uprightness of character and dignity in one's way of being. A work that leaves a lasting echo. Sieu Phong is not an easy beauty. It does not conquer the viewer within the first few seconds. But the longer one observes, the clearer one truth becomes. This is a work that marks a historical turning point. The moment Vietnamese bonsai began to step away from rigid molds and enter a freer, deeper journey of creation. For in art, only those who dare to leave the familiar path can hope to leave a trace for time itself. And Sieu Phong, even today, still stands there, a quiet milestone, impossible to overlook in the long story of Vietnamese bonsai. When we think of Sieu Phong, it reminds us of one simple truth. In art, as in life, only by daring to lean before the wind do we gain the chance to stand firm for the long run.